Welcome to FIRSTAR Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardiner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate pros. Brought to you as always by FIRSTAR Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics. In association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's FIRSTAR Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. James Gardiner here with Matthew Arnone on board. We're here to talk about performance wellness. We had an opportunity a couple weeks ago to speak with Brady Leovold, a former professional hockey player, now using his battle with addiction and mental illness to provide support for others. And Brady aligned with us, brought us on board to sort of talk about our platform, our program called Performance Wellness. And in doing so, actually had one of his voiceovers, a hockey announcer out on the west coast of Canada, do a nice little voiceover that introduces what it is that we're doing. So we'll play that now. And then Matt, let's jump in and just kind of talk about this program and let people know what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're going about it. Sound good?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Hockey to Hell and Back is brought to you by Performance Wellness. The collaboration between FIRSTAR Therapy and mindframe brings a flexible, holistic program to athletes. The goal is to empower and enhance every athlete's well-being on and off the field of play through focus on intentful movement and mindful practices. You can contact them at consult@firststartherapy.com and team@mindframe.info. Plus, you can check them out on the web at firststartherapy.com and follow FIRSTAR on Instagram at firststar.therapy and at mindframe on Twitter, plus mindframe fit on Instagram.
A nice little intro that we didn't really expect, other than, Brady said he would put something together, and now Performance Wellness sort of supporting the support network that is Puck Support through Brady's Foundation and the Hockey to Hell and Back podcast. That ad runs on there as our support for him and his support for what we're doing, Matt. And let's just kind of go down the line of why we're doing what we're doing. And that's a nice summation of it. But I think hearing your story really helps to connect athletes and practitioners and human beings, to why this matters. So let's start there, and I'll share a little bit, and then we'll share how we connected and how this thing plays out.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me again. It's always fun to be on these and just listening. Last week as well, or last session, with Greg Zahn, and listening to his story, and it all kind of came full circle for me, and hearing all these different practitioners and athletes, and this is the why for us, is this is the community that we want to build, and the reason that I'm here is because this was the community that I very dearly missed as I went through the formative years of my career, and really struggled with a singular identity, really struggled with performance anxiety, anxiety outside of the field of play, and it really, these were the gaps that were missing. I think in those formative years, these were the things that ultimately became the things that held me back from achieving those dreams of being a professional athlete. And once explored and once sort of recognized within myself the potential that was there, recognized where this can go for me and how do I get there, it became a lot easier to be a leader. It became a lot easier to be that person that reflected that same piece outwards, and shared that wellness with others. And I think why we're here, is how we can show others that, performance and wellness are not mutually exclusive, and one is very much entangled with the other. And I think in the sporting world, in the professional world, and sometimes even in the collegiate world, these student athletes, these professional athletes suffer from that very same thing, that performance anxiety, because they are only an athlete. And when Matthew discovered that he wasn't just a central defender, gladiator, whatever you want to call him, and in the defending space of playing sport, he realized that there was a human underneath there. And I think that's what's lost sometimes in this endless pursuit for what we love, and it becomes sometimes the thing we hate. So this is kind of unveiling that, and I think where we go from here is showing everybody that this is something that we start with the human, we make the human well, and watch performance grow as well.
Yeah, beautiful, and appreciate the audience and the support that you've become with the podcast, and I'm glad you listened to Greg, because I pulled a lot of things out from this week's session with Greg's on as well, and one of those things, like, titled the podcast "Don't Forget to Smell the Roses," like, that was his one regret, was not stopping to smell the roses. And this is not dissimilar to your story in the collegiate space, where you won 2 national championships as a soccer player at York University. And this is where we had our overlap, as I was working as a therapist, as an athletic therapist in that space. And, to your point, when we stop thinking about the moment that we're in, we lose the value of it. And so the national championships are great, the rings, the medals, the trophies, the t-shirts, all of these other things, but those fade if we aren't fully invested, right? And so I think your story as an athlete, your story as identifying as an athlete, and then furthering that to, yes, I'm an athlete, but I'm also much more. And during times of COVID, and the timing is almost perfect in terms of performance wellness and our readiness to roll this out for teams, organizations, structures, whoever is ready and open to receiving this. It's beautiful. It's brilliant, because it is the human first approach to performance. Myself, I've worked in the strength and conditioning space, the therapeutic space, and more recently sort of entered or allowed the exposure of yoga to enter into my world and our world, and breath work and all these other things. And I think this holistic approach really sets us up for performance, because you and I talk about this at length, not only through performance wellness, but on our, seemingly our daily dialogue, that there are really no linear equations when it comes to enhancing performance in life or in sport. And let's go specific to sport, because you, the athlete, myself as the athletic therapist, we can put weight on a bar. We could squat it, we could deadlift it, we can push it, we can pull it, we can do whatever we want with it. But there's not a whole lot of linear value there to say, okay, now I'm a better athlete because of it. I'm a better soccer player. I can, do these things. Here with performance wellness, we look at this as a linear equation. The linear equation being, the more that I can access of myself, the better I am. Whether that's a strategy to create space to reflect, a strategy to create space in a game, in a performance, or more range of motion, greater stability, mobility, acknowledging the stability mobility ratio in the body in certain joints. This is a linear equation that, as I grow as a human being, as I grow to know myself, I am better. And therefore my performance is enhanced. And that's fairly linear. It may seem simplistic, but you and I also talk about the fact that this is almost so simple, it can't work, but it certainly does. You've lived it. So let's walk through a little bit, maybe if you're comfortable with it today, walking through, sort of how you found mindfulness and meditation, and then we'll get into sort of the intentful movement that we've now paired together in this synonymous relationship, or the synonymous program platform of performance wellness, and how it plays out.
Yeah, so I think for myself, and I think much to the common athlete journey, I think the difference is, as Greg said, we don't get to smell the roses. We don't have the ability, the perspective to take this step back and understand exactly what we're doing. And if we are in an ebb or a flow, just knowing whether you're on an ebb or a flow, and understanding that that is part of the journey, that is part of the process. Automatically, from a scientific perspective, we're emotionally regulating, right? And when we emotionally regulate, we talk about total failure, and total failure happens in the body. Lots of research, lots of literature on we believe it to be 100%, but there's actually an extra 20% there. We actually only go till about 80% before the self-talk kicks in, right? And before we start to feel less than, our self-concept starts to diminish as a result of negative self-talk or all of these things. And I think what we do is when we understand where we are in the process, whether that be, a conditioning set or an interval training or a hard shift on the ice, or a tough game where you're pinned in as away from home. One story that pops into my head is very much being away from home to the eventual champions Hamilton Forge in with Halifax, where we were a bottom end team, and we were up 2-0, and understanding that those, blowing that 2-0 lead and the game eventually ending 2-2 is part of the journey. It's part of the growth. It felt like a loss, and when you understand that it's only part of your journey, then the blow is a little less, right? And similarly with the victories, right? When you understand that you are on the path and this is a success, this is part of that compass showing you you're in the right direction as a piece of progress rather than success, rather than a tangible success, then you're also allowed to emotionally regulate from the positivity. And I think the difference here is to find that even keel, to find that steady state, where you can enjoy as much the final, the national championship final, as you do that mundane mid-October day where you're preparing for a game against perhaps a non-playoff contender. And for my story, as James mentioned, this linear equation that we look for, I'm very much a left-brain person. I'm very much that person that loves to quantify so that I can make sense. And I think when I tried to make sense of how do I get to the professional ranks, or how do I give myself the best chance, immediately came to, you need to do the stuff off the field as well. You need to do the stuff that others won't do. You need to, prepare yourself like a professional before you earn a dollar. And I think that investment goes and pays dividends in life in general. And I think the growth that came from that experience was very much, priceless in that way. But where I'll start is jumping in the gym and being on the field. I don't think there's one person that would tell you that I wasn't a talented player, that I am not a talented player. And I think very much is getting in the gym, working with people like James, working with people like Costa, as we know, Adam Douglas, some of the top strength conditioning specialists in our country. And, they would tell you themselves that they probably have never seen a soccer athlete so driven. They probably have never seen a soccer athlete lift so much, squat so much, whatever it might be. And that was the linear equation for me. And based on my knowledge at the time, that was how I got to the next level. If we were to rewind this and talk about what was between the ears now, and zoom out of the body for a moment, in my early life, I was a child of domestic violence. I had an older brother that basically was a human shield at times as he was of age to kind of make sense of what was going on. And very much because of that, I wasn't very socialized as a kid. I didn't have as many hangouts with friends, and wasn't able to go to the park because eventually I also became part of that human shield where there was a bit of a dynamic there that I felt as if a protective figure in my mother's life, and my father struggled with addiction and mental illness as well. And looking up to my brother, he was kind of the best friend that I never got to sort of establish in elementary school in those younger years. And we always talked and dreamed about playing soccer, and those dreams and those aspirations were very much childish in the way that they were very superficial, right? Wouldn't it be cool to have a name on the back of the jersey, and wouldn't it be cool to play in front of thousands of people? And as that developed and as that grew, the love of the sport grew, and all of these positive aspects, but not understanding it fully, not understanding what was actually developing from a growth perspective, in those formative years, what was developing into anxiety and depression, and carried into sport, right? We can't look at these things as gym, life, soccer, and mutually exclusive from one another. They very much blend and flow into each other. And in 2010, I lost my brother in a car accident, and at the time was very obviously devastated, and was playing in a professional environment for Toronto FC Academy, and it was a tangible path to pro. It was a tangible path to live that dream. And that anxiety bled into the field. That anxiety turned into performance anxiety. That anxiety turned into this heightened expectation that now I must be a professional. Now I must be a pro, because this is something that my brother and I talked about from when we were kids, and now he's not here. And that grieving actually pushed me further into the sport, pushed this singular identity even further, because what was happening in life wasn't pleasant, and what was happening in sport was very pleasant. So that became my addiction, if we're going to go there. Soccer became that outlet for me, but in an unhealthy way. And fast forward that to the gym, fast forward that to being of physical development, being of that state of physical development where you can start to see adaptations in your body and pushing to the outer limits of what my body can do. There was a gap there in between the 2 years, and I think that's where I stumbled on mindfulness. I understood, again, being a linear person, being, hey, how do I get from A to B? I said, well, I train my body to its max. I don't think, barring, any alien DNA that I have inside me, I don't know that I can increase my VO2 anymore. I don't know that I can squat any more than, almost 2 times my body weight. These are the types of things that I would question in myself. How do I get there? I hit a block after York University. Wasn't able to break into the pro ranks. Bit of lack of opportunity, but when the opportunities did come, few and far between, I experienced performance anxiety. I wasn't able to perform. I wasn't able to string together 3 or 4 good performances, and that ultimately held me back, and led me into more depression, led me into diving deeper into this thing. And in those dark spaces came the light of mindfulness for me. It was very much the introspective art of mindfulness. I think that I understood a little bit more, and when I took that step back, when I established perspective, it actually drove me and propelled me further into performance. It propelled me farther than I've ever gone. And this is the linear equation where, started off with a few books, and then it started off, and then it developed into something where I genuinely started to see results. I genuinely started to see that linear path again. And I ultimately, as if a flip of a switch, I became a professional within 6 months of adopting this kind of lifestyle when it came to meditating 5 minutes a day, going for walks and breathing fresh air, and taking that time to really smell the roses. I think when people think of smelling the roses, they think of weakness, right? And just like Greg talked about going for treatment as a sign of weakness. Like this space in the sport world, I grew up in a space where in the sport world and with my coaches and with the culture that was around, you needed to be quote unquote tough. And if you weren't quote unquote tough, especially as a defender, the central defenders are known as the pillars of the team, right? And they're the strong backbone, we'll call it. And the backbone is, it can be something that hurts at times too, right? It's a piece of the body just like anything else, and it hurts. And I think that's understanding that I was human and understanding that my hip moved like this, and there was no sense in trying to change my technique, but rather enhance it, right? And this is me, and I'm going to enhance me. And when I enhanced me, it was almost like I said, the flip of a switch. It was something so powerful for me, and what it allowed me to do, I think, is what Greg talked about, is smell the roses along the way. I think my first year as a professional, I moved to Italy, new country, and I soaked it all in. And whether that be missing the bus because I didn't understand the schedule and I didn't speak the language very well, or I took the wrong bus, I was able to just look out the window and appreciate all of it. And I think, missing the bus, waiting for it, grabbing a coffee, and making the best of whatever it was, I think was how I ultimately found myself. And fast forward to today, I think it's something that I've dove into further because I've seen results. I've seen results in way of performance, but I've also seen results in the way that I emotionally regulate. I think performance anxiety is something that I've almost put all but behind me. I think it's never something you really get rid of. But I think the way that you approach it, and I think the perspective we take is so important to that. And just developing these strategies to understand more of me, and then what I need in those very moments when I'm experiencing anxiety or I'm experiencing a bout of depression. And I think this is a key piece to not only finding performance, but finding strategies that serve us well beyond and tap into more of you, right? I'm kind of wearing a shirt for those, for those that can't see, obviously. But it's about finding you. It's about finding this yogic principle where you are happiest in the moment when you're not expecting it to be anything other than what it is. And I think James and I talk about this and can keep talking about this ad nauseum, but it's something that we've both experienced, and we're here to we found, to some degree, and we're still finding within, but we've seen how powerful it can be. And whether you're an athlete looking to, again, be a pro, whether you're a person looking for wellness, like this is for you, and it's going to enhance your performance, and it's going to enhance your ability to be well. And I think when we be well and we be humans better, we make this bigger community, and we make sport better, and we make all of these pieces better. And conversation by conversation, share by share, we make a better world. And I think that's the that's the why for James and I, and we're just so happy to be on this this venture together.
Yeah, I think it's great. And the shirt reads, the answer is within you. And that's what performance wellness is all about. We can throw away mindfulness, we can throw away meditation, we can throw away virtually any of the words that are scary and just call it about exploration, right? And exploration results in awareness. Awareness results in attention. Attention and intention are directly linked. And so when we go with intention into the mind or into the physical space, we can produce tangible results, and we can look at analytics. And you have put together some great things with mindframe, and we're looking at how we can pair this with performance coaches and with sideline coaches and personnel in the therapeutic space. There's plenty of stuff we draw from performance wellness that can be analytical, but there is also the piece that is the art form of self-exploration, creating strategy from within. And so you share your story, and every time I listen to it, it's so very powerful. It also resonates with myself on various different levels. And I think definitely resonates with other athletes, with practitioners, with humans, because the human experience is what this is all about. And so as we shift or drift down the line here a little bit, like, what is performance wellness? Performance wellness is mindfulness, meditation, and intentful movement all paired together, where we don't separate the mindful piece from the movement piece. They're very much ingrained and integrated, and they overlap and they underlap, and they are just, I think the word you used at the beginning was entangled, and very much so. One doesn't exist without the other. And so you and I reconnected. We connected at York University. Again, just a brief summary: you were on the soccer team there. You were a captain of that team that was a national contender and twice over champion while you were there. I was a therapist in the clinic on the sidelines with the football program and then the outdoor sports, and got the opportunity to travel with that juggernaut that was York soccer on a regular basis out to the OUA championships and the Canadian championships. And you and I had a very good relationship. We connected on a lot of different things in the clinic, on the table, on the sideline. I would come to you for things, you would come to me for things. Then I left and sort of followed your career as you were going through the professional space, and we were living abroad, came back, reconnected based on the fact that, we need to align somehow. There's some cosmic force sort of driving this thing, because the mind and the body and performance can be systematically linked. We talk about George Mumford all the time, who's, mummified, I think the term was mummified the Bulls and the Lakers, right? He's always with Phil Jackson, and that was Phil Jackson's idolization of George, was he mummified all the athletes, right? They were doing this stuff behind the scenes. Is that the difference? Is that the separator? Maybe, maybe not, but it's part of the equation, because if you don't take care of the self, if you don't understand your own responses or your own reactions, then there's something that we're missing. So what does this look like? This program looks like a 4-phase program spread out over 8 weeks that can be done completely virtually or in person. It has physical elements, it has mental elements, it has the shared human experience where teams or organizations can come together and learn about themselves, but in a safe, vulnerable, committed, intentful environment, right? And so we practice, like, let's move through the shoulder and see how the shoulder works. Like, truly how the shoulder works. Oh, you get pain there? Okay, that's an awareness. You don't have pain there. You thought you couldn't do that, and you can. You have an injury, but you're still able to move it. Okay, these are awareness pieces that contribute to the mental side and creating strategy in the long term. And you do a fantastic job, Matt, summarizing how this works and plays out with your science background, which you didn't even touch on. And so you got into, you finished your kin degree, and then you've done since a specialization in mindfulness through U of T, and I've studied it through yogic principles and a full immersion course through that, and navigating it in my own life and my own space, and reading alternate to that. And so again, like, I'm similar in a singular identity in the early part of my career, in that I am an athletic therapist. I am a strength and conditioning specialist. I have to stay in these lanes. I have to dress a certain way. I have to act a certain way. I have to do these things. And those were expectations that I think inherently I put on myself, but also from being in those environments, this is the expectation of me. My own or somebody else's, that was what I interpreted to be myself doing my best until, yoga found me. I found yoga. We found performance wellness and have now identified that by having other people say, like, this is amazing work that is connecting things that were seemingly never connected before. So we're not trying to overhaul the world of sport performance. We're simply trying to enhance it through supplemental action that can be done within each and every human being. So performance wellness, how does it work?
Performance wellness is as you mentioned, is touching on the pillars of, we'll call it well-being, right? And it uses the principles of mindfulness to establish that well-being. That well-being being awareness, positive outlook, compassion. Those are the pillars. Those are the foundational principles. I think that we can establish a sport culture. And I think, as you touched on, I need to act a certain way. I need to be a certain way. I need to have this sort of demeanor. And I remember myself and trying to be more, desirable to a professional team. It's like, wow, this is a central defender that is big and strong, big muscles, and is going to be a beast, and all of these things. Maybe I perhaps tried to grow a beard, and we can all laugh at that if you've ever seen what kind of beard I can grow. But these are the ways that we think we need to fit into these boxes, right? Really, the only box we need is our box, and we need to start to push those boundaries of the box. We need to start to expand the box so that we can fit more in the box, right? And when we talk about labels and we talk about awareness, this is that awareness, right? And if you were to think about it as an athlete, and I probe this question to athletes or practitioners, how many times you walk in the locker room and there is a generic, angry rap music, rock music, whatever you're experiencing in the change room, and imagine a person who's already high strung, a person who's been through, domestic violence, who's been through these things, experiences anxiety and depression. And if you're a practitioner, understanding what's going on between their two ears allows you to connect better and deliver better care to the athlete. If you're a coach, how does this apply to you? Well, you understand your athletes. Hey, Matthew doesn't need to be pushed harder. Matthew's already on the arousal scale. He's already at an 8 out of 10 when he walks in for a Monday practice for a Saturday game because he experiences anxiety on a regular basis, right? So rather than understanding that, people would always look at me and say, why do you disconnect yourself from the group? We're listening to music. And I would have, music that made me down regulate before a game. People wanted to jack themselves up, and maybe they did, and maybe they just weren't aware of what they needed in that moment, right? So people think that in their fears, they're gonna dive further into that and get themselves fired up to fight the dinosaur, as James talks about. And I understood that I had no chance against my dinosaur. So I needed to down regulate to about a 3 or a 4. And that's where I optimally performed, right? So I think this awareness piece, I think, is central to all of it. Whether it be understanding that we can down regulate through breathing, we can down regulate through a containment exercise, a thought containment exercise, we can down regulate through reflection simply. When we identify in the brain what it is we're feeling through awareness, right? When I'm thinking, I've been distracted by my central focus, I've been distracted by a thought or an emotion, simply understanding what that emotion is. Hey, that's sadness. Hey, that's fear. Hey, that's performance anxiety. Hey, that's another thought about what I have to do next. Anything that we can identify that pulls us out of this present moment allows us, yes, to refocus and come back to the present moment and train that attentional focus, but it also down regulates us. When we understand what it is we're seeing, the body is looking for safety. So when you cannot identify what it is you're feeling or what it is that you are doing, your body's going to ramp up because it could be a dinosaur, it could be a leaf blowing in the wind, it could be a lawnmower behind you. You really don't know. But when you're able to, quote unquote, open your eyes and understand it's just that sadness that's happening, it's just that fear of or match day anxiety or whatever it might be, you've automatically, through that articulation in the brain, not only activated, the positive affect part of the brain, the right anterior insula, the prefrontal cortex, excuse me. And what you're doing in those moments is there's an inhibitory pattern in the brain where one fires, that right side of the brain fires, but it also has inhibitory principles that down regulates that amygdala. So one activates, and it doesn't just activate, it actually, inhibits the other from working. And I think that is an important piece to understand, because through that awareness, we can actually identify and articulate in the brain, and think of it as a skill, right? The more you train that piece, the more you bicep curl, you're not just going to hold a 20, you're going to grab a 25, you're going to grab a 30, you're going to grab a 35. These are the weights, right? So performance wellness is not designed to eliminate stress, but what it is designed to do is the ability to take this beginner's approach, this lack of expectation, lack of any environmental factor, whether internal or external, that's going to bring you to a place outside of your optimal range. So first we must understand within what is the optimal range. We must understand how we respond to the shoulder. When I rotate my shoulder and I hit that impingement, what do I say to myself? What is the self-talk like? And I think that reflective piece is where we find within. We start to develop these thinking, we start to, rather than develop, we start to identify what our thinking, what our self-talk looks like when we're running a high intensity interval, or we're running through a circuit training and we're at minute 35 of 40 and we're absolutely gassed. What is the talk in there? Does it start to diminish the self? Does it start to bash within? I thought I'd be more fit than this. I'm not good enough. And these are the things that are very much interwoven, right? So I think from that aspect, we talk about that awareness, and it simply being aware allows us to be more responsive and look at the self as if it was another, right? We talk about that compassion, and that's where I'll transition to next. Is we give ourselves that space to be compassionate, just like we do to another. James and I have these conversations all the time, and when it's something in his life and it's something in my life, the opposite person tends to give the best advice. And I think where this compassion falls short within, this self-compassion, is also a skill we must train. And by giving ourselves space, we can sort of give ourselves the advice that we would give somebody else that we don't normally take ourselves, right? And
100%.
who better than ourselves to give ourselves advice? We are the experts of us, right? James says this all the time. He is an expert, but he's not the expert of me. I am ultimately the one who knows me the best. And I think through that awareness, through that compassion, we can start to generate this positive outlook. We can start to generate positive affect in the brain. And ultimately that positive affect, as we talk about this entanglement, it works backwards, and it works to reciprocate the body. When we have a positive affect, when we have an optimal range of arousal, then I can actually have an optimal range of muscle tension. I can actually have an optimal range of communication between joint capsule and brain. And therefore, I can actually get more range of motion. And being aware of this, and this is an anecdotal response, is waking up on a day where you're in a rotten mood and comparing that to your shoulder range on that day. Try your shoulder range on that day. Try your hip range on that day when you're in a rotten mood. Notice what your body does. Your body is naturally more tense, right? And when you have that, you actually have a lack of oxygen delivery to the body in places where you don't need it. You actually have a heightened stress response where you don't need it. Similar to when you're in a bad mood, someone comes in the room, asks you a question unrelated, you bite their head off, right? This is that reactive response, just a physical manifestation of that. So I challenge you to understand your mood in that day, check in with yourself, and then check in with how your body responds to what your mental state is, right? And simply understanding that, and simply understanding that from one moment or one day to the next, we have this sort of impermanence, is the big mind. This is the big mind that we're trying to approach with. Moment to moment, it is impermanent, and we understand it and treat it as such. We develop an equanimity in thinking where it doesn't have that control over us. We don't react with emotion. We respond, right? And I think when we emotionally regulate, we get a better gauge of what we need in that moment, and we're able to respond accordingly, right? And I think that is very much like you said, the external environment has expectations of us. We talked a lot about internal, but what does it look like on the external? Well, when we understand what we need within, we can now start to facilitate that in the external environment, right? Whether that be a very difficult relationship, we'll call it, we understand how we react to it, and we understand how our response to that or reaction to that in the past has not been positive. We can now strip it down and understand where we can, maybe by trial and error, we can start to understand what it is that will give us a better outcome with that, difficult person or that difficult topic with a spouse or whatever it might be, or a family member. And I think when we start to lay these foundations within, and then we start to lay them in the external environment, whether that be a positive affirmation on your toothbrush every time you grab it, to sort of facilitate and start in motion a positive feedback loop rather than a negative feedback loop, right? So if I start in the morning and I have anxiety and I have depression and I'm waiting for that phone to ring for my next team to sign me, I look at my phone and I don't see a message, I've already started my way on the negative feedback loop. The talk starts, the negative self-talk and all these things. But rather, as I've known, I understand my response to that. I understand the effect that has on my day. I start my day by rolling over to the right. As soon as I roll over to the right, I see a picture of myself and my brother. I have a little sticky note underneath that talks about basically doing all that you can do. It's a man in the arena quote that I live by. I have it as my wallpaper on my phone. And these are just positive affirmations. These are just small things that we can do in the external environment to facilitate that. So understanding how we respond to the external environment, and then laying the table, setting the table for us to have progress, for us to facilitate that progress. And I think just knowing gives us the tool. And I think that is the ultimate piece that we provide. And I think that's something that's holistic, and I think that's something that improves not only in a pandemic, the ability to connect with others. I think the ability to be vulnerable, understand ourselves better. But I mean, as you and I both know, James, this is something that is an absolute game changer for performance as well.
Yeah, and you touched on some amazing things. I mean, the dinosaur piece, the T-Rex, and knowing that our responses are fight, flight, or freeze. And so how do we navigate those? And you did an amazing job sort of summarizing, creating that space and creating that softness to be able to either find something, an object that you can fight a little bit better with, create space enough that you have a good enough head start that you can get away. Or, if you're going to freeze, you freeze completely still. So you don't even, you're not even tempting to that T-Rex or whatever. The next piece is, as you talk to the internal, moving into the external, I think I know that as we recognize it within, we then begin to see it in others. So we look at this, let's take that difficult relationship and look outside of ourselves. And you're starting to understand within yourself that, okay, I'm reacting right now. So I can then have this awareness, this compassion for that other person is also in that same boat. And whether they recognize it or not, they are reacting. And when we're both reacting, it's not typically going to result in anything positive. If we can create that little bit of space, and in the pro sports space, they now have, like, this didn't used to be a thing. Like, they used to interview right after games, but now they have that pause where they go to the locker room, and whether they're reading the prescribed things that you're going to answer, or just use cliches or whatever, they're creating that physical space between the time the game ends and the time they go to the podium to answer questions. And so that's sort of synonymous. But let's bust into the physical a little bit, because I think when we talk mental a lot of the time, some athletes, and Greg Zahn would be one, certainly, is as we talk this mental game and this shift towards awareness and the shift towards compassion, that can be looked at as soft, and that can be felt as, that's not for me. That's a little out there. That's not me. That's not how I operate. And that's perfectly fair. And so we also entangle the physical piece where we begin to explore full range of motion. And you talked about the capsule, what we do in the physical space, and we're not going to get into specifics, but we're more than happy to deliver. You can go through FIRSTARtherapy.com. You can reach out to Matt and Mindframe, either way, and we can get this to you. It's nicely set up on the front page of FIRSTARtherapy.com currently, is you can just scroll down, type in your name and your email, and get our deck, our PDF of summarizing, here are the 4 phases, here's what we're doing. And we'd be more than happy to set up with anybody who reaches out a call as to how this can work in your organization, your space, your team. But the physical space, as we get to the physical practice in performance wellness, we are navigating intention and attention, right? And so as we do that, we enhance the ability. Yes, I have an ankle injury, or I always get hurt, or I have a knee injury. And so we navigate that space from within as well. You begin to navigate it. And as we break down that barrier to entry, if I am completely attentional and intentional in what my elbow is doing, by definition, I am being mindful. I am being full of the exact thing that my mind is intending to do in that moment. I am attending to the intention. And this is it. And so the physical entry to this space also enhances through that capsular patterning. So we talk from brain to capsule, from brain to joint, from brain to body, from body to brain. And there's lots of terminology in the therapeutic space: neural drive, neural uptake, proprioceptive feedback, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, cross-hemispheric, da-da-da-da-da-da. We can throw any name we want at it, but really, Matt, when we simplify this down, the takeaway is intentional acts create attention, attentional acts create intention, and in doing so, we're creating more of you, more awareness of you. You are the captain of your ship, Matthew Arnone. You are going to go wherever you want to go. Our job as Matthew Arnone and James Gardiner, part of Performance Wellness, and guiding this, is simply to be that roadmap to help you either avoid an iceberg, have you see the iceberg, or to maybe even be like a little bit of that lighthouse where it's dark out. You just don't know where to go. So here's just a little beacon of light to show you this is how you can navigate more shoulder flexion, more shoulder external rotation, more intrinsic motivation or awareness. All of these things are paired directly, physical to mental, mental to physical. But if we're going to strip it down to the physical side again, we're creating an enhanced language. We do not know if we don't go. So if I always bench press and I'm right in this range, and then I keep getting anterior shoulder pain, but I keep going back and I'm not exploring the full depth of the range, or even outside of the bar, I'm not expressing totalic motion of the joint, the glenohumeral joint, then the next time I go to bench press, I'm still not working within my full potential. And so this is it. It is recognizing the potential that is within each and every individual human in the space of performance wellness. You cannot perform your best if you are not well. You cannot be well if you're not performing at your best. And does that mean I have to win a gold medal every time I'm on the pitch or on the ice or in the gym? No, but in that moment, the more moments that we can be fully committed to, the more we're winning. That is progress. That is progress replacing success. Success comes only after incremental and consistent progress. And that's what this program is. 8 weeks, 2 times a week, hour-long sessions with an opportunity to embed this into your daily life, to embed this into the little things so that you can be consistent and continue to drive enhanced performance, increased access, increased awareness, more you. The answer is within you. So we help and guide through our experience and our expertise, but ultimately rely on you as the expert of you to navigate this.
Yeah, no, I mean, James hit the nail on the head. And I think this, when you can access, and we'll put it into athlete terms for all the athletes listening. And, again, this is a barrier to access for a lot of people that, think this is hosh posh or think this is wizardry or something like that. And if you're looking for tangible examples, I tell James a story all the time where I used to call it my pirate leg, my left leg, and my ability to use my left foot is very much was diminished over a long period of time because I simply would favor that strong leg, that dominant leg. And when I began to understand, through this mindful approach to external rotation of the foot, I began to understand why that there was perhaps an issue with the balance on the right side. So as an athlete, I'm trying to get the best out of my body. Well, understanding my body, understanding that, working this program and understanding the neural communication between the toes, I can now splay my toes, gain more stability in that single leg action, as we know as soccer players is so common. I can now externally rotate by actually speaking to the lateral hip, actually speaking to the lateral glute to open and actually perform a technique relevant to my sport. So as we think about relevance to sport, when I can extend my hip to a range that is not leveraged, and I can actually generate more force at that beginning of the action, at the action potential, I can actually carry that momentum as the hip flexor, shortens and generate more power in my shooting, right? Similarly, James, in the shoulder, if we can generate in a non-leveraged position, in a long lever position, where we know biomechanically the load is perceptually much higher as we're throwing a baseball, if I can generate more through that very we'll call it unfavorable position, not only am I taking maybe some stress off the valgus nerve of the elbow, but I'm also driving through and I'm actually creating more potential, more force through the long lever as I come into that favorable position. Can I add a kilometer or two to my pitching, or whatever the case may be, right? And I think that is a piece where you can tangibly understand, you can tangibly goal set. And I think that's one of the things we touch on. We can goal set as humans, we can goal set as athletes, we can goal set on our articular rotations. We can again take this approach where goal setting, another thing where we can take goal setting that is meant to plan for the future. It's meant to pull us out of the present moment. But by being completely present with what we are doing, by setting objective pieces to this subjective journey, we can actually allow ourselves to facilitate flow. When I know and I have a clear directive of what it is I need to be intentful of in this moment, I can apply my full attention to do that and therefore experience that flow, right? So understanding what it looks like, setting the table for it, understanding what you look, what you feel, what you taste, what you smell when you're in those moments, what you pay attention to. So with this calm mind, what do I pay attention to? And now I have a calm mind. Now I've learned to focus completely. What exactly is relevant to my performance that I can put in now in this calm mind that's going to get me a better output? And I think understanding that it's different for every individual. So we take the tools, you hold the hammer your way, I hold the hammer my way, but we hammer the nail in. And I think that is 100% what we're looking for in terms of an alignment group, in terms of working with individuals. This is a game changer, not because I did it, not because you do it, but because we live it as humans, because we've seen the results. James himself would never tell you this, way too humble of a guy, but worked with athletes much, much more decorated than myself, Hockey Canada women, NHL athletes, and they are finding this for the first time, and they're finding a potential that they never knew they had, and they're already at the height of their sport in the world. Right. And I think it goes beyond that. I think they found more of themselves. I think they found more of themselves, whether it be their hip, whether it be attending to their hip, whether it be understanding where their limitations are and working within them. And I think that's a very important point where you talk about, I have an ankle injury. And when we develop this equanimity between thinking and emotions, and this is worth one and this is worth one, and we can emotionally regulate in that way, we also become more aware of the body. I'm not my ankle injury. I'm not defined by my performances. I'm defined by the entire picture, right? So we take these pieces, we take these little pieces, we put them together, but they're not just the sum of their parts anymore. They're not just the sum of the parts. They become something greater. And when we put it back together, we have a greater whole. We have a greater picture. We have a greater repertoire to pull from, where I am the athlete and I'm advocating for the athlete. My strength coach gives me a program and says that I need to be squatting. Well, I have, medial knee pain. Maybe that's not the best idea right now to put that under strain. Or maybe it's a Bosu squat, for example. And maybe I don't want to be putting the medial knee under that strain. Or maybe I have a tight hip flexor. Maybe I need something else. And by being more aware of your body, by having this understanding and this communication, again, we're creating that space to communicate in an objective way. Right? We're not attaching feelings to missing a lift. We're not attaching thoughts to missing a lift. We are in the lift. We are on the field of play, in the rink, on the court, whatever it might be. And when we can do that to our full ability, we all know, we've all experienced that flow state, that loss of time. We don't think about what time it is in the game. We don't think about what time it is in the world. We don't think about what the weather's doing. We don't think about if we're cold or hot. We are completely entrenched in what it is we are doing. And when we are completely entrenched in it, we can also understand that that piece is how we get the best out of it. Those are some of the best games I've ever had. And I was completely entrenched with every step I took, with every pass I made, with every header I won, with everything. And I think there was no thought about the crowd. There was no thought about anything else. And I think when we understand what that looks and tastes like, we can facilitate it, right? We can start to set the table for it. It's something in a non-striving way. We can't make it happen, but what we can do is lay the foundations for it to happen as much as possible. And when we do that, that is optimal performance. When we take that piece and we take it into our daily lives, that is optimal experience, right? When we think about quality of life, when we think about happiness, the amount of time we can spend in this moment is the degree of happiness, is the degree of enjoyment that we can, basically quantify our lives by, right? And our quality of life by. And I think the more we're here, the more we're happy, the more we're experiencing optimally. And I think that is what this program is about. It's about wellness. It's about performance. It's about all of these things. It's about happiness. It's about present moment. And it's about changing the world one conversation at a time, right? It's about connecting this community, understanding within, I can be a better teammate. I see an individual going through the exact things that I've been through, right? And in that way, I understand what that individual may need. I understand that there may be solutions for that individual, but whether or not I've given the accurate solution is almost irrelevant to the point that I've reached out. I've taken that person in a place of isolation when they're experiencing internal chaos, we'll call it. We're talking about pain and isolation, shared neural pathway in the body. There is a complete, literature piece that I treat it like the Bible because it is so powerful to understand that. And how it applies to our pandemic is when we're isolated and we experience pain, whether it be a physical or emotional or a mental pain, they're a shared neural pathway. So by reaching out to somebody, by understanding and resonating with what they are going through, whether or not you've given them accurate advice, whether or not you have even given them a solution that they can apply to their own life. By simply reaching out, you're breaking that cycle of isolation. They are no longer isolated because they are interacting on the thing that they are experiencing. So you're creating community. And I think that's where leadership, we talk about the intangibles, we talk about being a good leader, talk about driving this new sport culture where you're not weak if you ask for help. You're not weak if you connect with another person. You're not weak if you walk in and you say, listen, up here in between my 2 ears, I am not doing well today. Can we move the needle to a place where the athlete can advocate for themselves? Yes, but it can be received and it can be appreciated by the others, by the, the upper management, by the coaching staff, by everyone involved, where we can start to speak the same language and slowly but surely change that sport culture where an ankle injury is treated the same as mental illness, is treated the same as a shoulder impingement, is treated the same as a singular identity. All things that we need to work on, all things that are not injury or ailments, but things that we have. We all have direction of growth. It's just identifying where we need to grow in order to be the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, beautiful capture. And that's performance wellness sort of exploded. It can be simply these sessions for this amount of time, or it can go into all of those different channels. And ultimately, this is where you and I connect and see this going, is those that are willing to live it and allow it to be lived will experience it to the heightened points that they experience. And so again, we guide, but you steer. Like, you're in charge of you, and so you experience it the way you experience it. And the physical piece, again, we're more than happy to get into this with any coaches, organizations, therapists, practitioners, human beings out there that want to learn more about this. The physical pieces overlap a little bit with sort of neural drive and intentional focus, and some yoga and cross hemispheric movement for stress, and creating a flow state of movement. Like, how do I transition from isolated joint work to multi-joint, multi-tiered movement? And how do I get association and dissociation understanding in my brain? And how does that help me to become an athlete that either rotates one way all the time or rotates both ways equally, or whatever the case might be. But a beautiful summation of it all. And I think that piece, again, ironically enough, that listening, right? And listening to you from within you goes a long way, but sometimes you need some help to get there. And this is the help. We've taken it from other people. We've put this together in our space and through our experiences to connect the dots that are all there, to supplement what is already going on, not as a taxing another thing I have to do to be an athlete. No, to connect all of the things that you are as a human being, including enhancing your performance on the field, off the field, optimizing within, acknowledging that the struggle, the growth are seemingly synonymous, but they're also the purpose. Like, we must go to know. And so listening, for all of those out there listening to this, we appreciate this. This is a platform that we know is growing. We've had numerous conversations with our organizations in across the country and internationally, and this is about to take off. And we would love feedback and love to dialogue on this. And we are looking forward to rolling this out with you, with your organization, with athletes that are interested, practitioners that are interested. So again, it's performance wellness, a holistic approach to sport, and building a community based on you. Your best you comes from within. It doesn't come externally. It comes from guidance externally. We grow from within with the guidance outside of that. We are the guidance. This is the platform for you to get better, to increase your performance, to increase your understanding, your awareness, your drive, your desire. All of these things come from a program that is based in experience. It's based in science. It's based in lived experience. Matthew Arnone, Mindframe Fit, at Mindframe Fit on Instagram, mindframefit.com. You can reach him at team@mindframe.com. firststar.info. You can reach me at firststar.therapy, consult@firststartherapy.com. Again, it's performance wellness. We're happy to have a conversation, or 17, about what this is and how it can apply. And I think the beautiful part about this program even further is it's completely malleable to you and your organization. The only hard and fast things about this is that we're guiding this thing. We're willing to have conversations, but ultimately coaches, administrators, athletes, you understand your scenario the best. So we meet, we talk, we discuss, and this becomes completely malleable to your surroundings, to your setting, to your schedule. And again, that's optimization. That is how things work best. The open communication, the awareness that this doesn't have to replace anything. In fact, it shouldn't replace anything. It's supplemental, it's growth, it's consistency, it's performance wellness.
And I'll add one more thing in there. It's foundational. This is a foundational piece, not for an athlete, not for anything other than the human. I think this stops at human, and I think we find this common ground. And I think this is for whatever you are doing. This is if you are a lawyer, a doctor, a firefighter, an athlete, a coach, a strength coach, a therapist, front office. When you begin to speak a different language, when you begin to speak to the athlete in a different language, and I can say this because I yet to date have received this language. I was actually an advocate for myself and was actually, sort of perceived as a difficult athlete, one of those difficult athletes. Call it in the homophobic terms, a princess, as I've probably quote unquote verbatim taken from some organizations, whether it be presidents or coaches or whatever it might be, advocating for the self because I had a deeper understanding of me. This is where we want to drive the needle. We want the athlete to be the center. We want the therapist to be the center, because when they are the center of their we'll call it universe, or when they go within and they find more, they can go to the external environment and provide more, whether it be on the field, whether it be providing care for the athlete, whether it be communicating and getting the best out of your athletes if you're a coach. The last message I'll say, and Greg Zahn said it best, and I'll keep it short, is whatever it is that you are doing, whether it be playing your entire career, whether it be a collegiate career, whether it be a national championship, whether it be battling to make the playoffs, whether it be trying to treat that, that chronic, inversion sprain that someone's dealing with, that James dealt with for me, and always kind of rolling my ankle and always kind of tackling that, whatever it is that you are doing in your field of work, in your life, in your family life. I think what Greg Zahn said best is how we get the most and suck the juice out of this fruit that is life is to smell the roses as much as possible. And I think regardless of whether it's a pleasurable or a tedious exercise, if we can find some way to smell the roses, we are enhancing our ability to live as humans. And then therefore we spread that light outwards and we affect the world for the better. So thank you guys for listening. We are really humbled by, the audience. We're humbled by the support thus far, and we look forward to any feedback and any dialogue, because this is how we share and grow. So thank you guys.
Yeah, beautiful. Matthew Arnone here, James Gardiner, performance wellness, and alignment of mindframe fit and FIRSTAR Therapy, creating an optimization of wellness and performance in the human and sport space. Because when you're done athleting, you will continue humaning. We grow from within. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Again, reach out. Happy to answer any questions and dialogue on this platform and more. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com, CONSULT@firststartherapy.com, on Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is FIRSTAR Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.